Welcome everyone, I'm Chris Hansen, and in this video I'm going to be using Photoshop CC 2019, and I'm going to show you how to create a layer mask so that we can make the sky in this photograph a different exposure than the rest of the photograph. While there are a lot of ways to do this, this is one, and it's a good one to start out with, especially if you haven't used masks with adjustment layers before. So I have the photograph selected, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new curves layer. And to do that, I'm going to come up to the adjustments panel and click on the curves adjustment layer right here. So what that's going to do is create a new layer for me, and we're going to right click on this layer mask and we're going to delete it. This will save us some work a little bit later. Now with the curves layer selected, I want you to come up here and make sure that the marquee tool is selected. Your tools may be on the right or left side depending on how you've configured your layout. I've moved mine over here, so I hope that doesn't confuse you. If yours is on the left, just find it over there. With that selected, you'll notice that up here we have a select and mask option. Let's go ahead and click on that, and that'll bring us into the select and mask dialog. Now, depending on what you have selected over here on the right, let's click on overlay. And with that selected, come over to the left and make sure that you've got the selection brush highlighted here, and then make sure that the plus sign is selected. As far as size goes, you can size the brush here, or you can also use the keyboard shortcuts, left square bracket or right square bracket. And as you can see, I can change the size of it. So I'm going to make it fairly large so I can select large areas of the sky. So now I'm going to click, hold down, and drag to the right. And it's going to do its best to select that. Now let's take a look at refining the mask. Along the top of the mountain here is where we can run into some problems. If you find that it's not a clean selection, you can go over here to the left and choose the Refine Edge tool. Make it a small size. I'm making mine 125. And then I'm going to click and drag along this edge and let up. And it's going to go through and it's going to refine that selection. In some cases, it's going to undo the selection. In others, it's going to select. And as you can see, I was able to select parts of the cloud here. In some places, it's selected it. So it would be possible at this point if I wanted to select this part of the clouds without selecting the underlying mountain. It's doing a pretty good job there. Let's go ahead, we'll leave that. I'm not going to select the other one. I want the light levels left alone on that. Let me show you one last thing. If you selected an area that you don't want selected like this, we can come up here and we can click on the minus tool, or we can hold the Option Alt or Alt key down, depending on whether you're on a Mac or Windows, and we can unselect that, just like that. So then moving over to the right, there's a lot of options here that we're not going to go into today because I want to keep this simple and straightforward. But what I do want you to do is to go to the Output 2 and make sure that it is a layer mask, because we want this layer mask we just created to be applied to the adjustment layer, the curves layer that we just added. So click on OK, and that'll take us back to here. And as you can see, we have applied a layer mask to this adjustment layer, the curves layer. Now I'm going to zoom back out for my photograph, and I'm going to hold the Alt or Option key down and click on the mask and just briefly talk about what's going on here. On the right here, you see we have the photograph underneath the adjustment layer, the curves layer. In the area where it's black, it's going to show what's on the photograph underneath. So what that means is as we make adjustments to the exposure through the curves layer, those adjustments are not going to show in the areas that are black on the mask. But on the areas that are white and in between, it's going to show those changes. The intensity of those changes will depend on whether it's pure white or some shade of gray. So then Alt or Option clicking on the layer mask again brings us back to the photograph. Now let's click on the curves adjustment icon. Come up here and make sure that you have properties selected. If you've got something else selected, make sure properties is selected in your tabs. And if that's not showing, you can come up to Window, come down and select properties, and that will make it visible. So now let's take a look and see what happens when we adjust this layer mask. Okay, so I'm just going to play with this just a little bit so you get an idea of what we can do. And you'll notice over here, this small cloud that we didn't apply a mask to, it's not being affected. But this one to its left is being affected as we change the exposure. So now let's turn this off and on. I'm going to click on the little eye icon here, and that is without the curves layer active. And that's with the curves layer active. So you see that it can have a profound effect on the photograph. And by using this layer mask, we're able to independently adjust the exposure of the sky compared to the rest of the image. So there you go. We learned how to create a layer mask, apply it to an adjustment layer, the curves layer. And of course, you could have chosen any of the adjustment layers that you wanted to apply this mask to. And then we took and adjusted the layer, and we had the opportunity to see what it looked like before and after, which allows us to fine-tune the look and feel of the image. So there you go. I'm Chris Anson. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope you found it helpful.